The end of the road. Imagine following a road to its end, not to a city, not to a border crossing, but to a wall of green chaos where the asphalt simply surrenders. The Pan American Highway is the longest motorable road on Earth, stretching nearly 30,000 kilometers from the frozen tip of Alaska to the windswept shores of Argentina. It connects two continents, crosses deserts, mountains, and plains. Yet here, in a remote corner between Panama and Colombia, it stops. This is the Darién Gap. Did you know that modern engineering has tunneled through the Alps, bridged the English Channel, and built highways across the Arabian Desert? Yet for over a century, the most ambitious road-building nations on Earth have been defeated by 100 miles of jungle. Not one single paved road crosses this barrier. Not one. Feel the weight of this failure. This is not a desert. It is not a frozen wasteland. It is a living, breathing labyrinth of swamps, rivers, and rainforest that has swallowed every army, every bulldozer, and every plan ever sent to conquer it. The Darien is the only place on the planet where the modern world does not just pause, it completely ends. Here, the laws of civilization dissolve into something older. The jungle does not negotiate, it does not compromise, it simply waits. The Green Wall, geography of the impossible. Look at the map. The Americas are connected by a thin thread of land, the Isthmus of Panama. At its narrowest point, only 60 kilometers separate the Caribbean Sea from the Pacific Ocean. This was the place where the Spanish dreamed of a canal, where nations fought for control of the world's trade routes. Yet within this strategic choke point lies a wound that has never healed. The Darién Gap covers roughly 16,000 square kilometers of the most impenetrable terrain on Earth. It stretches from Uvisa in Panama to Turbo in Colombia, 106 kilometers of roadless wilderness that no vehicle has ever crossed. Think about the landscape. This is not a single jungle. It is a maze of ecosystems layered upon each other. Dense lowland rainforest rises into rugged mountain ranges reaching over 1,800 meters. Rivers appear without warning, swelling into raging torrents during the 9-month rainy season. And then there are the swamps, vast stretches of knee-deep mud and standing water that stretch for miles, where every step forward is a negotiation with the earth itself. The humidity here can reach 100%. The annual rainfall exceeds 3,000 millimeters, more than London receives in an entire decade. In this environment, metal rusts within weeks, wounds become infected within hours, and the jungle reclaims any clearing within months. The Darien does not simply resist human progress, it actively erases it. The biology of terror. If the terrain does not kill you, the inhabitants will try. The Darien is one of the most biodiverse and most dangerous ecosystems on the planet. It is a primordial laboratory where evolution has produced masters of survival. Imagine walking through the undergrowth. Beneath every fallen log, coiled in every shadow, waits the fer-de-lance, the most feared snake in the Americas. Its venom destroys tissue and blood cells. A single bite can kill within hours, and in the Darien, medical help can be days away. Alongside it lurk coral snakes, bushmasters, and the eyelash viper, perfectly camouflaged among the leaves. But the larger predators are just as present. The Darien is one of the last strongholds of the jaguar, the apex predator of the American jungle. These ghosts move through the forest in absolute silence, capable of crushing a skull with a single bite. Harpy eagles, the largest raptors in the Americas, patrol the canopy with talons the size of grizzly bear claws. Feel the constant assault of the smaller terrors. The real danger often comes in microscopic form. Mosquitoes carry malaria, dengue fever, and yellow fever. Botflies lay eggs beneath human skin. Leishmaniasis, a parasitic disease spread by sandflies, can cause disfiguring sores that take months to heal. Bullet ants deliver a sting so painful that indigenous people use them in warrior initiation rituals. The pain lasts for 24 hours. In the Darien, every breath is borrowed. The jungle is not hostile, it is simply indifferent to human survival. The first people, guardians of the gap. Yet humans have lived here for thousands of years. Long before the Spanish arrived, long before the first road was ever imagined, the indigenous peoples of the Darien had mastered this labyrinth. They are the Embera, the Wunan, and the Guna, the true sovereigns of this green kingdom. Look at their architecture. The traditional Embera homes are built on stilts, raised 3 meters above the forest floor to escape the floods and the snakes. The walls are left open to catch the faint breezes, and the roofs are woven from palm fronds that shed the relentless rain. These structures are not built to last centuries. They are built to be reclaimed by the jungle and rebuilt in harmony with the seasons. Think about their knowledge. For the indigenous peoples, the Darien is not a hostile wilderness. It is a pharmacy, a supermarket, and a temple. They know which plants cure fever and which cause death within minutes. They can read the river currents, predict the rains, and track a jaguar through terrain where outsiders see nothing but chaos. But feel the pressure they now face. The same isolation that protected these communities for millennia is now being breached. Migrants, drug traffickers, and armed groups have turned the Darien into a corridor of chaos. The guardians of the gap find themselves caught between the ancient world they have protected and the modern storm that refuses to stop at the jungle's edge. The conquistador's nightmare. The history of the Darien is written in the bones of those who underestimated it. The Spanish arrived in the early 16th century with dreams of gold and empire. They built the first European settlement on the American mainland right here at Santa Maria la Antigua del Darien in 1510. Within a decade, the jungle had reclaimed it. Imagine the terror of the conquistadors. These were men who had toppled the Aztec and Inca empires, who had marched across deserts and scaled volcanoes, yet the Darien broke them. In 1519, Vasco Núñez de Balboa crossed the isthmus and became the first European to see the Pacific Ocean from the Americas. He called it a triumph. What the history books rarely mention is that nearly half of his expedition died along the way, from disease, starvation, and attacks by indigenous defenders who knew the terrain intimately. The most infamous disaster came in 1698, when Scotland attempted to establish a colony at New Edinburgh on the Darien coast. The Darien Scheme, as it was called, aimed to control trade between the Atlantic and Pacific. It was a catastrophe of biblical proportions. Disease swept through the settlers. The Spanish blockaded the colony. The jungle consumed everything else. Within 2 years, over 2,000 colonists had perished, and Scotland lost nearly a quarter of its national wealth, a failure so devastating that it directly led to the country's union with England in 1707. The Darien does not just defeat invaders, it erases them from history. The road that never was. In the 20th century, the dream of conquering the Darien shifted from empire to engineering. If the Pan American Highway could connect Alaska to Argentina, it would create the longest road on Earth, a symbol of hemispheric unity. There was just one problem. Did you know that serious plans to close the Darién Gap have been proposed and abandoned at least 6 times since 1971? The Inter-American Highway Congress has allocated funds, engineers have drawn routes, governments have signed agreements. Every single attempt has failed. Look at the obstacles. The most viable route would require building over 100 kilometers of road through terrain that floods for 9 months of the year. Engineers estimate that construction would take at least a decade and cost several $billions, assuming the jungle doesn't reclaim each completed section before the next one is finished. But the greatest resistance comes from an unexpected source: science. In the 1970s, epidemiologists raised the alarm. The Darien acts as a natural disease barrier, separating the foot and mouth disease endemic to South American cattle from the disease-free herds of North and Central America. If a road were built, the economic consequences of a disease outbreak could exceed the cost of construction 100-fold. And then there is the environment. The Darien is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, home to endangered species found nowhere else on Earth. Environmentalists, indigenous rights groups, and international organizations have formed an unlikely alliance to keep the gap closed. The jungle has found defenders in the halls of both. The invisible highway, the migration crisis. Yet despite the lack of a road, the Darien has never been more crowded. In recent years, this primordial jungle has become one of the most dangerous migration routes on the planet. They come from Haiti, Venezuela, Cuba, and as far away as China and Afghanistan, desperate people seeking a new life in North America. Think about the numbers. In 2023 alone, over 500,000 migrants crossed the Darién Gap on foot. That is more than 500,000 human beings walking through one of the deadliest jungles on Earth, without roads, without guides, and often without enough food or water. Imagine the journey. From the Colombian town of Necoclí, migrants board overcrowded boats across the Gulf of Urabá. They land on the edge of the jungle and begin walking. The crossing takes anywhere from 5 to 10 days for those who know the trails. For those who don't, it can take weeks, if they survive at all. Feel the weight of what they carry. Families wade through chest-deep rivers holding children above their heads. The elderly collapse from exhaustion. Thieves and armed groups prey on the vulnerable, taking what little they have. Bodies are found along the trails, some from drowning, some from dehydration, some from violence that will never be investigated. The United Nations estimates that hundreds die in the Darien every year. The true number is almost certainly higher. In this lawless corridor, the dead often remain uncounted. The shadow economy. Where there is no law, other powers fill the vacuum. The Darién Gap has become one of the most important transit corridors for the global cocaine trade. Look at the geography of crime. Colombian cartels control the southern jungle, Panamanian gangs dominate the northern trails, and in between, a network of coyotes, human smugglers, charges desperate migrants anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 per person to guide them through the chaos. It is a multi-million-dollar industry built on human desperation. Think about the drugs. An estimated 90% of the cocaine consumed in the United States passes through Central America, and the Darien is a critical bottleneck. Laboratories hidden deep in the jungle process coca paste into powder. Armed guards protect shipments moving north on trails that no satellite can track. But feel the human cost. The narco-economy has militarized the jungle. Armed groups, remnants of Colombian guerrillas, paramilitary factions, and criminal syndicates compete for control. Indigenous communities are caught in the crossfire. Migrants are robbed, assaulted, or forced to carry drug shipments as a toll for safe passage. The Darien is a place where the absence of the state has not created freedom. It has created a different kind of tyranny, one ruled by those who have the most guns. The disease barrier, nature's quarantine. Yet the Darien serves a purpose that few understand. It is not just a barrier to roads and armies. It is a barrier to disease. This jungle may be one of the most important biological firewalls on the planet. Did you know that foot and mouth disease has never crossed the Darién Gap? This highly contagious virus devastates cattle populations wherever it spreads. South America has struggled with outbreaks for decades, but North and Central America remain disease-free, protected by 100 miles of jungle that no cow can cross. Think about the economic stakes. The North American beef industry is worth over $100 billion annually. A single outbreak of foot and mouth disease could trigger mass culling of herds, trade embargoes, and economic losses in the tens of billions. The Darien, in its lawless indifference, provides a quarantine that no border fence could replicate. But the barrier works in both directions. The jungle also slows the spread of diseases moving south, from rabies variants to invasive insects. Scientists are only beginning to understand how this biological firewall functions and what might happen if it were breached. The Darien is not just a failure of engineering, it is a success of ecology, a place where the natural world has, perhaps accidentally, protected itself from the consequences of human connectivity. Chapter 9. The Survivors, Those Who Walk Through Hell. For all its terror, the Darién Gap is not impassable. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people prove that the human will to survive can overcome even the most hostile terrain. Their stories are testaments to desperation, courage, and the unbreakable drive for a better life. Listen to their voices. A Haitian mother describes carrying her 2-year-old daughter through rivers so deep the water reached her neck. She walked for 8 days, eating only what she could forage. She watched others fall behind and never saw them again. When she reached the Panamanian border, she collapsed and could not stand for 2 days. She says she would do it again without hesitation. A Venezuelan man recounts being robbed at gunpoint on the second day of his crossing. The bandits took everything, his money, his phone, even his shoes. He walked the remaining 6 days barefoot, his feet so infected by the time he reached safety that doctors considered amputation. He now works in a restaurant in Texas, sending money home to his mother. Think about what drives a person to attempt this crossing. They know the risks, they have heard the stories, they have seen the bodies. and they go anyway. For many, the danger of the Darien is still less terrifying than the life they are fleeing. Poverty, political persecution, violence, or simply the absence of any hope. In the Darien, survival is the ultimate act of faith. The last frontier. The Darién Gap is more than a place on a map. It is a puzzle of existence. It is a land of paradoxes, where the most advanced civilization on Earth is stopped by a swamp, where the road to the American dream passes through the gates of hell. And where the jungle's indifference becomes a strange kind of protection. Imagine leaving this land. What you carry with you is not just images of danger and despair. You carry the realization that the Darien is the last frontier, a place where the wild still defeats the machine, where ancient peoples still guard ancient secrets, and where humanity's reach finally meets a boundary it cannot cross. Centuries of conquest have failed to tame this labyrinth. Empires have crumbled, colonies have vanished, roads have dissolved back into mud, and still the jungle stands, patient and indifferent, watching the parade of human ambition dissolve into its green embrace. Perhaps the Darien is not a failure of engineering at all. Perhaps it is a reminder that there are places on this earth that do not belong to us, that cannot be owned, that exist beyond the reach of bulldozers and borders. Cherish the silence of this last frontier. For as long as the Darien remains unconquered, we are reminded that the planet itself has limits, and that sometimes those limits are the only things standing between connection and catastrophe. Until we meet again on a new horizon, where the unimaginable beauties of our world are still waiting to be named.